My talk this morning is entitled Change Your Life. Rather, no, it's not. It's Change Your World. Little different. Well, I was told recently by somebody I know that they were driving past our church one day, and to their astonishment, the passenger in the car said, "That's a gay church." And this person was right. It is a gay church, but it's also a church for lesbians and heterosexuals. It's a church that people who have handicaps, physical handicaps, various disabilities, as well as those people who are in perfect mental, emotional, and spiritual health come to happily. Valley Community Church is a church for highly educated people, as well as people who are top-notch graduates of the School of Hard Knocks. We are a spiritual home for people who live in big houses and those who have very modest living arrangements. For people who had idyllic childhoods and those who were abused mentally, physically, emotionally, sexually. We welcome those who are unemployed, underemployed, retired, or who have been generously rewarded for their time and their skills. We're a home for people who have made major mistakes in their lives, as well as those who, by the grace of God, have avoided making major ones. Perhaps lots of minor ones, but they've avoided the major ones. In other words, this is a church that embraces all people because of our certainty of the truth that we are all children of an omnipresent God, and that everyone was made in his image and likeness, and that we are inseparably connected to one another. The truth of the universe is that we are all one. We are all connected because we are all part of an eternal, all-powerful, omnipresent force that we call God. You know, our textbook points out some words in John 3:6, that are powerful, that reveal something so important to us. And the words are, "That which is born of spirit is spirit." First and foremost, you must remember that you are spirit. You were born of spirit. You are a spiritual being, no matter how you might otherwise think of yourself. All the labels that we put on ourselves, that you put on yourself, and I do, young, old, homosexual, heterosexual, comfortable in life, feeling in need of certain things, they're all secondary. They have to do with an external identity, with the material world, with the world of change and challenge. Your inner identity, your true identity, is what God created when he created you. Powerful, wise, good, loving, knowledgeable, beautiful. Oh, that and so much more is your inner identity. God totally accepts you right where you are right now. He has unconditional divine love for you. Unconditional means his love for you is not dependent on what you've done or not done in life. It's dependent on what he knows you to be. To become familiar with this inner identity, to accept it as the truth of yourself, is a way to completely change the landscape of your life. Because his nature is boundless good, because you are with him, you are one with him, you are one with everyone else, you are one with his whole creation, And this whole creation has the unlimited potential for good, for everything in it, and for you. Now, there are many people, excuse me, lots of people who have had the experience of feeling one with everything to the very core of their being. But it's always inspiring to hear the accounts of them. And certainly one of the most famous accounts of someone who knew this oneness to the very center of his being was an astronaut by the name of Edgar Mitchell. He was one of only 12 men who walked on the moon. Now, this all happened in 1971. And it was during his flight home from the moon, along with Alan Shepard and Stuart Roosa. He was looking out the cockpit window, and he was seeing the moon go past and the sun go past, and our beautiful blue earth, blue and white, that shining earth in the midst of this immensity of black space. He saw it time after time. And he began thinking to himself, realizing that the molecules of his body, the molecules in the spacecraft around him and in his companions on that flight were prototypes, and they were created in some ancient generation of stars. You know, the heavy elements in our body, the heavy elements in the world, in our earth, were created in the fiery heart of a star that went supernova, blew up, and some of those heavy elements came here to this earth and made life possible. So he was realizing this, thinking about this, and then after that, he had the most wonderful experience where he felt, and I want to quote his words, an overwhelming sense of oneness, connectedness. It wasn't them and us, it was oneness, accompanied by an ecstasy, an insight, an epiphany. Oh my God. Wow. Yes. The whole landscape of his life changed from that moment on. This hardened, kind of skeptical, non-religious scientist, a test pilot with a PhD from MIT, a NASA-trained astronaut, proceeded to make it his life's work to try to understand that most indescribable of human qualities, consciousness. In 1973, he founded an organization called the Institute of Noetic Studies, IONS, I-O-N-S for short, IONS. Noetic comes from the Greek word nous, which means inner knowledge. The Institute does research into exploring the frontiers of inner space, scientifically researching the potentials and the powers of consciousness. He was recently interviewed, and during that interview, he explained the beliefs, some of them, as well as the experience that he had, the beliefs that have come forth from that moment of incredible oneness, connection with everything. And that some of the things he said are very familiar to us. The universe is in some ways conscious. It is an intelligent process at work. The humans, the animals, the systems are part of the same thing, a synergistic whole, something that is so integrated and working so exquisitely together. And I want to quote him again. We are all part of the same thing. There is a connection, there is intelligence, there's a feeling of oneness, an extension of self. And it's a joyous and wonderful experience. As I experienced it at this point, coming back from the moon and looking at the Earth, suddenly I recognized that our scientific description of reality, of this universe, was far from complete. Our model was not yet filled out. And on the other hand, our religious descriptions of ourselves, of creation, of the universe, all of them were somewhat flawed and incomplete as well. In other words, our knowledge of who and what we are, how we got here, where we came from, and where we're going is very inadequate at this point in history. And yet, there is a feeling of intelligence, of peace, of abundance, of process that gives one comfort and joy in observing this magnificent universe of which we are a part. Contemplate that for a moment. See this little planet from that perspective. See if you can't experience it as I did. Unquote. There is an authority in that, isn't it? There is an authority that convinces us of what he said, even if we didn't believe it before. If we heard beautiful words about it. But somehow it didn't get into us. His words sometimes can find a path into us. Now, we might not yet have had an experience like his, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. That doesn't mean that we can't look forward to something like that, exactly like that, or slightly different and maybe even better. Is that Mitchell any different from or better than anybody in this room? Not any way different or better. We are all God's children. No one was created more or less than anybody else. And while Dr. Mitchell probably had never heard of divine science, our teachings of who and what we are, of creation and the universe, how we got here, where we're going to, and where we came from, are not flawed. They are complete. They're not inadequate. They are whole because they are truth. God's intelligence, his peace, his abundance, his joy and love, his image is in us. And the process of God in action is in us now and is ongoing. All of what we share on Sunday mornings has to do in some manner, shape, or form with this: what we are, who we are, where we're going, what the creation is. I found it interesting to read that Don Miguel Ruiz, who is the author of the Four Agreements we've been talking about here for a while, appeared at the last IONS conference. And this is what he said: you create your story. You live in that story. And if you don't like that story, only you can change it. You are the only one who can change your world. Divine science gives us a clear picture of where our story about ourselves is, and if it is the spiritual truth of us, or whether it is a tissue of falsehoods that our childhood home, our society, our negative experiences, or our negative states of mind have taught us to believe about ourselves. I hope you see clearly right now that you don't need the old labels. You don't need to describe yourself in negative terms, especially as we think about the past. That is not the real you at all. You are looking at what were external things, and you have given yourself an external identity sometimes from it. That was your former description of yourself. But your internal identity, your eternal identity, is an unlimited child of God. You are spirit, because that which is born of spirit is spirit, and you were born of spirit. You are one with God, and you are one with all that He is, wherever He is, which is everywhere, in everyone and in everything. You are, as our divine science statement of being says, you are God individualized. This is the true story that you need to consistently tell yourself. This is the way you change your world to that of unlimited good. Shall we close our eyes? The way we've labeled ourselves in the past can be so far from the truth of us. We have to turn our backs on that and know what our inner identity is, what God knows about me right now. And as you define that, you redefine yourself to be in harmony with the truth of you. That is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself. That is the most freeing. That divorces you from old limitations, old labels, from old ideas, and opens the door wide to newness, opportunity, a totally new view of an experience of life. Why wait? Why delay? Why not right now define yourself as God's child and all that means? Thank you, beloved one, that you have created a universe, a world that will support us and sustain us in every way, for you are omnipresent in it, in everything, in every person, in every place. For the good that you have always prepared for us and the good that we desire, the good we are experiencing, we say thank you.